Is there a truly reality out there that humans could really know? It's an age-old battle between realists and absolutists. God is not great, how religion ruins everything. And yet it's utterly and totally ridiculous. We need to live for something beyond ourselves. He was, to put it mildly, he was a drunk. And no matter how many times he tried to stop drinking, no matter how many treatment centers he went to, it didn't work. He always went back to drinking. Then something fascinating happened to him. And well, let me quote him. Let me read you what he said. Almost of their own accord, my legs gave way and I fell to my knees. In the privacy of my room, I begged for help. I had no notion of whom I thought I was talking to. I just knew that I had come to the end of my tether, and I had nothing left to fight with. From that day until this, I never failed to pray in the morning on my knees, asking for help, and at night to express gratitude for my life and most of all for my sobriety. I chose to kneel because I felt the need to humble myself when I pray, and with my ego, this is the most I can do. If you're asking why I do all this, I will tell you, because it works. It's as simple as that. In all that time, in all the time I have been sober, I have never once seriously thought about taking a drink or a drug. Close quote. Now, what's fascinating about this testimony is that it doesn't come from a young Billy Graham. It doesn't come from young Jerry Falwell. Instead, it's famed rock and roller Eric Clapton. Yes, that's Eric Clapton. And yet, in one sense, it's not all that surprising. It's kind of a hard world out there. Who at times hasn't been battered, even big time, by the cold, harsh facts of human existence? And who at times hasn't sensed the need for something outside of themselves, greater than themselves, in order to try to get through the rough patches? Who at times hasn't felt that you just couldn't make it on your own and you needed a higher power? You know, someone once said that humans, we need to worship something, anything. And if we look around, it's not hard to see people worshiping all sorts of things, because I think people are trying to find some kind of meaning, some kind of person, some meaning, some kind of purpose to their existence. And in the case of Eric Clapton, sometimes they're just looking for pure help, nothing else. You know, today many people are searching for something. Everyone's, into this, into that, and nothing works. People want fame, fortune, and yet everything in the world just so easy to crumble. I remember a while back I picked up some celebrity magazine somewhere, and it was talked about some couple that had just gotten married, some Hollywood couple, I don't know. But I got a kick out of it because the headline said something to the effect of, Joe and Sue, maybe that's their names. Joe and Sue married 2 years and still going strong. Well, congratulations to Joe and Sue. They're married 2 years and it's still going strong. Congratulations. See, our culture is obsessed with youth. It's with beauty. For some people, their god is sports. Some, it's love of money. Yet in the end, how much ultimate satisfaction do they get out of this? I remember reading, there was all this hoopla about the Beatles in 2009 and hoopla and all that. And there was an article in the Rolling Stone, and they talked to Paul McCartney. And McCartney said at one point, after they got all their fame, all their money, they got everything, at one point Paul McCartney said, okay, we've got fame and riches. And now what? Now what? In other words, they had everything that the world could offer, and he still was sensing a loss, sensing a need, sensing something missing. As human beings, we're looking for something. We're looking for something that the world in and of itself just doesn't offer us. It was Thoreau who once said, human beings live lives of quiet desperation Maybe sometimes it's not so quiet, but I imagine there's an awful lot of people, maybe somebody listening to me right now with a sense of desperation in your lives. And yet in the midst of all this, there's the outrageous claim of Christianity. Claim that there is a God out there. There really is a God, and he knows you, and he loves you, and he cares about you. You know, it's funny. I remember a number of years ago, I had a friend. This was before I was a believer. And we were talking. And we were talking about God. And I remember him saying, well, maybe there is a God, maybe there isn't. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. And I looked at him. And I said, are you crazy? I said, if I thought there were a God, if I really thought that there were a God, a personal God, I said, nothing could be the same. How could anything in life be the same? Nothing would be the same for me. And I remember he just sort of brushed it off, and I couldn't understand that kind of thinking. I thought if there really was a God out there, and he really cared, I don't know how, it would seem like everything in my life would have to change. I just couldn't say, well, if there is, great, great. If not, not. And I think in the end, the most amazing thing about Christianity, the most amazing thing is this idea of a personal God, a God who is involved in our lives, a God who cares about us, who cares about what happens to us, a God who wants the best for us, a God who is willing to enter into a personal relationship with us. You know, relationships can be the greatest thing that we have in this world. And they could also be the greatest source of pain and suffering too. When you have a good relationship with someone, it's great. But when you have a bad one, oh, it can make life miserable. Well, the good news of Christianity is that you can have a good relationship with God. And I believe this is the essence of true spirituality. The essence of true spirituality is not just believing in God, not just believing a set of doctrines and all that, but the essence of true spirituality is to have a personal relationship with God, to know God personally, to know for yourself who God is and what he is like. You know, someone once asked Jesus, what's the most important of all the commandments? And it wasn't, you'd think, well, don't steal, don't sleep with somebody you're not married to, on and on, things that you would expect. And yet it's fascinating. Jesus said the most important commandment is you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and your neighbor as yourself. That was for Jesus the most important commandment. And notice it was relational. It was relational. It was of this kind of relation and that kind of relation. And so often religion for people, oh, it's just a bunch of rules. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other thing. And there's a place for that. You don't have to be religious to know there's certain things you just don't do. Because if you do them, you are going to face consequences. You are going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt others. And that's all part of it, whether religion or not. But even more than that, Christianity is calling you to a relationship with God, to know God personally, to draw strength from God personally. Don't take my word for it. Seek for yourself. Seek to find out if there is a God first, and then seek to know him, to know this God. And then coming into a relationship with him is, I believe, the first step to not only to knowing God, but ultimately coming to love God. And your life will never be the same.